So yeah, we're live. Go ahead. What was your question?
Can you see my name on the bottom?
No.
No.
Sometimes
There
you
it
go.
is.
You know. Sometimes it decides it's not going to let you do that anymore. We don't know why.
Well,
Like
that's
Kevin is no longer allowed to have a lower third, and I wasn't for a couple months. And I haven't tried it again recently, so I should.
I feel like I'm totally rocking out like my Jersey-liciousness with this high pony that I got going on.
That is something else. Yeah, you're right out of the.
And these dangly earrings.
And your Minnesota North Stars hoodie.
Right? Check
Right.
that out.
Right.
Throwback Minnesota North Stars hoodie. There you go.
You belong in a bar in Barnegat somewhere.
I feel like I could like, do some fun hair tosses, you know?
Well,
Watch
yeah,
out, you might get the hair toss today, fellas.
Oh boy, hair tossing. That hasn't happened since the 70s on this show.
Come on, you hair toss all the time.
Well, I used to.
Sorry,
You've got the Bieber nod going on, and you've had it going on for way before Bieber.
Really?
Totally. And you know how many times I've talked to you, and your hair's falling in your eyes, and you've just gone.
Oh, yes. It's
That's
so.
the Bieber nod.
It looks so sensual when I do.
Sorry, I used to be able to do that, but I'm follically challenged.
I tried to say it. I couldn't get it out.
Nothing happens when I do this.
Oh my God. I couldn't
Well,
say
you
it.
could always get a wig or something. You could pretend.
Yeah, I'll borrow one from
Man.
Josh. That
There
blonde.
you
Josh.
go.
Right.
Is this part of the show brought to you by Sassoon?
We
Yeah.
are live from the G Your Hair Smells Terrific studios.
Kevin,
Still my
push your
favorite
screen,
Simpsons
your
episode
screen
ever.
down
Is,
a little
my
bit.
favorite Simpsons thing ever is when they go to the hockey arena and it's the G Your Hair Smells Terrific arena. I think that is just we need sponsors like that more often.
Do you remember
Go
the
for the Justin
shampoo?
Bieber thing, Jules.
Do
Is
you
this what you
remember
want?
Do you
want
remember
No.
the shampoo in the 1970s that was made of beer? It was a
Is that what G Your Hair Smells Terrific was?
I don't know if it was that one, but there was a shampoo that was the main ingredient in it was beer.
Yeah, well.
I can't remember what the name of it was, though. I'll have to look it up.
There's a Czech bubble bath made of beer.
There you go. I mean, yeah, beer is good for rinsing your hair, and
It
as
is. So
right?
is eggs and mayonnaise.
Ugh.
Ooh. that's,
I'm serious.
that's pretty gross, but yeah, I guess it would work. But yeah, let's start the show, huh?
Let's,
say?
on that note.
All right. By the way, before we do start, I do have to say thank you to one of our listeners who actually, and Julie, we didn't have you on, but you are the one person who can help me and back me up here because you are a fellow South Jerseyite like myself. Grew up, you actually represented the state of New Jersey for an entire year.
I
As
did.
their ¡1 leading lady. You definitely know what Take a Boost is, correct?
No.
Drink a Toast.
No.
You don't know what Drink a Toast or Take a Boost is?
It's
No.
liquid cocaine. That's what it is.
It's sold
I
like.
don't drink soda. You know this.
I know, but it's not soda. It's a drink that comes out of
I
Roebling.
drink water or milk.
Roebling.
Occasionally iced tea.
It comes out of Roebling, New Jersey. It's
Well, I know what that is.
it's been around for 100 years. Like you can get it in Florence and places like that. You know, all these towns you've been to.
It's a
Yeah.
liquid narcotic.
It is. It's straight up. It's the four times the caffeine of Coke, and it's been around for 100 years. And it's
This
So
is
I've
why
been-
you know that. 4 times the concentration of Coke.
yeah.
You have like an IV of Coke.
Oh, I know, but this is awesome. This stuff is intense, and it just
Are you
takes me
drinking
back.
it now?
Yes, I am.
Why do you sleep at night?
It's nighttime's a long time away. Yeah, and I'll have one before bed because caffeine literally puts me to sleep. I'm at that point where I've reached caffeine saturation, so I need a Coke to fall asleep at night. I honestly swear to God, not a Coke but a tea or something. I can't fall asleep without it, so that's really sad. But anyway,
You know what? I recently
funny
just
thing-
discovered that tea actually has caffeine in it. I was unaware.
Tea has more caffeine than coffee does.
Stop it.
Yes.
no, it doesn't.
Yes,
I
it
don't
does.
drink coffee.
Mike, you're 100% wrong on that one. Kevin?
Certain brands of
that's
tea.
all. There's caffeine at tea. I'm a low caffeine person, and tea is on my don't drink it list.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe I need to reassess my tea.
You can buy non-caffeinated tea though. You just need to find it in the supermarket.
There is no way it has more than coffee in it. There's no way.
Black tea has
I don't know about that, but
black tea
I just
has
know
more
it has-
caffeine than some coffees.
I'm going to have the answer by the end of the show. All right.
All right.
I'm
I
gonna look
drink
this up.
English breakfast tea. If you want to look that up, Ak. I may have to stop
English
drinking.
breakfast, yeah.
I don't like caffeine.
Black tea versus coffee for caffeine. Sorry, we gotta figure this out. This is a bold
Look it
statement.
out. Google that, as my best friend will
Right.
say. Any
I know.
question I have, she goes, Google that.
I know. Here it is. Flat out, Mike. You're wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. All right. Here we go. Ready?
I took far too much pleasure in
Okay,
saying
so if you can see this, black tea,
wow.
20 milligrams of caffeine. Coffee, 40 milligrams of caffeine.
I dispute that.
And you can even dilute tea by just, putting more water in.
Yeah, right. And I tell you
Which
that
you do for coffee,
my
but-
wife drinks so much caffeine, and the one thing I have on her is I don't drink as much alcohol as her. Sorry, love, or as much coffee as her.
What a
I don't
rush!
drink either of those things. I don't drink as much coffee or as much caffeine or as alcohol. But besides that,
Let's stop right here so we can pull the bus back and remove it.
yes, but I eat the red meat of 10 men, she says. So it all evens itself out in the end of the day. So there you go. All right, let's start the show. It's April 7th. Good God, Tuesday. All right, here we go.
Okay.
It'll go Mike, then Julie, then Kevin. In that order. Ready? Smiles. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, April 7th, 2015.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Julie Robenheimer.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where we come to you Monday through Friday around 1 o'clock to give you the news and keep you up to date so you don't have to pay attention to anything but the games. If you don't have to pay attention to them if you don't want to. We'll fill you in on that as well. So last night, I want to start here with my blog because I talked to Kevin earlier about this, but I wrote a blog about it too. Not because it was a slow news day particularly, but because it was a little bit of a slow news day. But I did write this blog, and last night I'm watching the game, the Kings game. Did you watch this? Any of you watch the Kings game last night?
I watched it.
All right, Mike. So you watched it, Julie? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm watching the Kings game. They're playing the Canucks. I'm sorry. I should say the Canucks game because there probably are more Canucks viewers. I was watching the Canucks game last night, and they're playing the Kings. And in between the second and third period, they bring on who to interview? They bring on Drew Doughty, who comes out, and Drew Doughty is, this guy we've talked about before, Kevin, is probably deserving of a Norris Trophy this year, and quietly doing this, having this unbelievable season for this team, keeping them afloat in many ways. I mean, Drew Doughty's having a spectacular year. So, he's a confident guy. He's a confident, cocky SOPs, as they say. So he comes out there and he says, okay, between the second and third period, they ask him, they're like, well, what important playoff game for you? Try to make the playoffs. He says to him, well, immediately, he's being interviewed by the Canucks announcers, too. That's the other thing that's also awesome about this whole thing. The Canucks guys are interviewing. He says, well, to be honest, we're not really thinking about playoffs. We're just thinking about home ice advantage in the first round. We have to win this game in regulation tonight, because we're chasing the Canucks because they've got that home ice spot in the first round. So we got to win this game in regulation. That's fine. Okay, now you might say, Eklund, there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly normal. Go ahead, Julie. You could say that.
Yes, I could say that.
All right, but I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say that I think you're insane, because if this was said by anybody else but a player on that particular team, it would be looked as unbelievably arrogant, pompous, and really cart before the horse, not to mention possibly jinxing their team's future, because this team has not been in a home ice position for the entire year, and they're barely making the playoffs right now as it is, and yet he's sitting there talking about, we're not worried about making the playoffs, we're worried about home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs?
Okay, no, that's not what he said. He didn't say that we're not worried about making the playoffs. That we're more. What he said was we're more focused on getting home ice advantage because it is still within reach. So I will agree that you need to get into the playoffs before you need to, be concerned about getting home ice advantage. But if this is your goal, you're not going to be like, okay, well, this is my goal, but let's focus on this other little goal down here first. They only have 3 games left.
Right,
so
and they're still not.
It's totally within reach.
It's within reach, but they're still not there. I mean, they are taking this down. They are cheating death in the most incredibly, arrogant way possible, in my mind, for a team that should be in the playoffs by now. And a team no one wants to play in the first round that might not even make the playoffs is pretty crazy. And I agree. Maybe I'm overstating it, but it just did sort of. Maybe I live too much in the Twitter world, because think if he had tweeted this. If he had tweeted this, just for a second, Doughty had tweeted, really want to win tonight so we can get home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs. If he had tweeted that, what would the response have been?
It depends on if you're an LA Kings fan or not.
Right. But for the rest, because you're a LA Kings fan, you're like, great, confidence, everything like that. But if you're not,
I will say, and I know I make a lot of comparisons to college hockey and teams and stuff like that, so I'm going to make another one.
That's okay. I'm just
should all be prepared.
Right back.
But this is how I felt about Michigan. When I talked to Michigan prior to the final season, the final weekend of the regular season, they don't really have a playoff because there's only 6 teams, so they only have a tournament. It's a one-weekend tournament, and they have a play-in game. So they were going up against Michigan State, and I said to them they were not secured an NCAA spot at this time, which goes against their motto for the year, which was leave no doubt, because for the previous 2 years they had to win the conference championship in order to earn an automatic bid. So this was the year they're going to leave no doubt. We're going to be in no matter what. And they're still on the bubble. On the outside looking in, they still needed to win every game, get every point possible, and all that stuff. And I said, where are you within? And I talked to their captain, Andrew Kopp, and he said, all of our goals that we set out to achieve at the start of the season are still within our reach. And our goal is still to win a national championship. Mind you, they were like 20th, and there's only 16 teams that are in the tournament from the start. So I see where Doughty is coming from, that all of their goals are still within reach. And especially considering the fact that they are the Stanley Cup champions, the fact that they want home ice advantage and that they want to win a Stanley Cup is like not this far out ridiculous goal that they should be focusing on a lesser goal.
Right. So you agree though that this is an LA thing. That if this comes from anywhere else, I mean, you would never hear Calgary. Even Calgary is saying this right now in my mind would be weird. Calgary.
Well, there is some extra swagger that comes with LA. I would say, given the fact that they are defending Stanley Cup champions. I mean, just think about like what Chicago, said last year. They wanted everything last year.
Right.
But they were in the playoffs, so that's a little different.
All right, let me get Kevin's opinion on this. Kevin?
This is why you're right, Eklund.
Okay.
If you went to the morning skate, of the LA Kings,
right,
and walked up to Daryl Sutter and said, Daryl, talk to me about winning that home ice advantage. The focus you have on that. He would look at you like you had 3 eyes and said, we haven't even got in the playoffs yet.
Right.
And you're trying to talk to me about home ice advantage. I mean, he would be insulted by that question.
Exactly.
And I think that's why you're right on that. I mean, it's just not good form for Drew Doughty to talk about that. I think it makes more sense for a college guy to talk in those sense because they're amateurs and I get that. I think what Julie said is I can see a college player saying, all of our goals are still within reach. It was what the University of Michigan football coach said all season as the losses kept piling up. Well, we still haven't lost a conference game yet. Well, we still haven't lost to a good, contender yet. It's still possible for us to win. So I think that's a little bit different. But I think that's the best indication. If you would ask any coach or player that, given this being in the situation the Kings were in, they would have dismissed that question as ludicrous.
Yeah, and I think Sutter. And Mike, go ahead, Mike.
I mean, I agree that Doughty's focus is a little off here. You got to make sure, especially with this team, where if you get into the playoffs and you're even 8th place in the conference, you could be the leading contender because of their ability to win they've won 2 Stanley Cups over the last 4 years. But the thing is, to ask Drew Doughty not to be, I guess, to say it kindly, full of himself with a guy who was the best defenseman in the Olympics for 2 straight Olympics and 2 Stanley Cup championships in the last 5 years. I mean, he's going to be that way. I mean, anybody who's got that kind of resume is going to be that way. So I don't.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm not criticizing Doughty at all. I'm like I said before, he is absolutely deserving of this, of any praise he gets this year, and in my mind was the best. I said, last year when Canada won the won the gold and he won the cup and everything. I thought he was the best hockey player for the entire year. If you were to say hockey player of the year, it was Drew Doughty. Yet he didn't win any awards. But he was overall hockey player of the year. Maybe Carey Price is in there too. But if Carey Price takes him to a cup final, you can make an argument. But
yeah, I disagree with Mike on this. Just only that I think everybody, top players would all think that, but I don't think very many of them would have phrased it like that. I think that was just.
And it's one of those, it's one of those hockey superstition things too that really plays.
Yeah, I mean, because it's Doughty, I think everybody would just laugh that off. I mean, everybody knows Drew Doughty the way he is, and he's an effervescent
Vancouver guy too. I mean, that's the other thing too.
Yeah,
he's saying
but I'm just saying, like, it would be odder if it wasn't, or more odd.
Yeah.
Which is it odder or more odd?
Otters swim in lakes, but yeah, otters. Crack shells and swim in lakes. But yeah, it is more odd.
Anyway, if someone else had said it, that is sort of Doughty. I think Mike's right in that regard. I mean, that's just kind of what because he really wasn't. He wasn't saying to be insulting of the Canucks. He was just saying, well, our focus is to rise as high as we can, and that means getting the home ice advantage. I think that's sort of how he meant it, but. You're right. It depends on the play. Like you said it on Twitter, there would have been an uproar.
It would have on Twitter. It would have read completely arrogantly, and it would have been something Doughty would have had to block 200,000 people from his Twitter, however. So tonight, by the way, moving on.
Let me just say one thing quick. I mean, Doughty's comments weren't at the heart of the problem last night against Vancouver. The problem is they scored a goal a minute and 13 seconds into the first period by Dwight King, and in the third period when the game was 1-0, they had two scoring chances. I mean, two good scoring chances, and Vancouver tied it up and won in the shootout. You need to score more than one goal in a game. I mean, yes, it could be 1-0 if Jonathan Quick stands on his head, and he's done that in the past. But going down the stretch here, with the offensive firepower that they have, you need to score more than one goal to win the game, and they didn't. That was the problem.
No, I'm with you 100% on that. I do agree. And then it was Jonathan Quick did play very well, but it wasn't. I mean, the Kings came out like gangbusters, and then as if they'd scored that goal, and they suddenly thought, that they were going to coast, and they completely. It was like the air was let out of their balloon a minute and a half in after they got that goal. This is an interesting thing going on right now, and this is kind of different. I'm going to show you guys something. So there's this new app on Twitter called Periscope. You're familiar with it? It's very popular right now.
I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it does.
Okay, yeah, the concept of it is a lot like what Julie and I used to do with Quick. Remember Quick back in the day?
Yeah.
Quick was an app that you could videotape something live that's happening in front of you, and what people could comment, and they would come up on your screen, and you could interact with them. That's what Periscope does on Twitter. And teams are doing it a lot, so you should really download this app on your because right now, like I just got a Periscope from the Colorado Avalanche, and here's like Patrick Waugh giving his press conference right now live on Periscope. Okay, so it's just a guy there, who's doing it. I'm not sure whose it is, but then I can sit here and I can say, ask Patrick. I can type in something. I can ask Patrick about.
So it really is a new Quick.
Yeah, it's a new version of Quick, but it's put out by Twitter.
But it's a streaming. It's not like Quick was streaming.
Quick was streaming.
Yeah,
Quick was streaming too. Quick was streaming too. So I could say, like, I put in here. I could say I put in ask Patrick about the goalie situation, and that comes up on the screen there on the bottom. Can't really see that. I'm sorry, but it comes up on the screen there on the bottom, and so now the person who is watching this press conference knows that I want to know about the goalie situation.
Recording the press conference.
Right. So what I'm going to do on Thursday night, I'm going to get the Flyers game against the Hurricanes, and I'm going to do some periscoping from the locker room afterwards. So if you guys want to check, I know you want to ask Flyers players things, I'll be doing that from here.
By the way, right now Periscope is only available for iPhones. It's not on.
It's only on iPhone right now.
Yeah,
okay. Well, that'll change.
Yeah, that will.
But it is a really.
I'll do it for the Frozen 4.
Yeah, you should do it. Absolutely.
Media Day is tomorrow, 12 o'clock.
Right. That's perfect use
I'll
for
do
it. It's so the interface is great, Julie. It's better than Quick was in that it's quicker and it's and Quick had its issues, but this is a way advanced version of it. So anyway, if you're just a tip, if you're out there want to download an app, Periscope on iPhone, it might also be on Periscope. Might also be on. Do you know if there's an app just not mobile, like that you can actually just watch Periscopes? I think you can just watch Periscopes on anything, right, Mike?
I think you can watch it on
It's in the Twitter. I think it shows up in the Twitter feed is the whole idea of it. So I think you can watch it on your as a Twitter feed.
I think
it's not
so.
just, but if you want to actually use it to film things and to stream things, like this morning the Florida Panthers had their morning skate, and there's just the guy who was sitting on the bench, one of the trainers sitting on the bench, just kind of filming the morning skate. It's very cool. It's really. There's some cool stuff with the Masters going on now, where some of the people behind the scenes at the Masters are showing you, like the cameramen are doing their own periscopes, and they're like, oh, we're gonna move to the next hole. So you see the guys in the Periscope walking to the next hole, and it's really kind of neat. It's really well done. And that's a lower version than we usually see of you, Kevin. We're seeing your stomach now. There we go.
Yeah.
I know my hair flip is exciting to the women out there, but we got to be careful. So let's move on.
Going out the rails.
Sorry, it's this drink. This drink is making me crazy.
We need to ban this. This needs to be controlled by the FDA. Come on.
Water.
I know it makes. And I think you're supposed to do like one. You get this big syrupy thing, and you pour like this much of it in, and then the rest water. I think I poured this much of it in, and the rest water. So I think I made this incredibly strong.
Call the paramedics.
Type drink. All right, here we go. But let's talk a little bit about the games last night. The Jets.
Are hot.
The Jets are hot, and Kevin, the Wild are not all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on
That's
this?
why I'm wearing my sweatshirt.
Well, it's really fascinating. I was talking to David Poyle, the general manager of the Nashville Predators, about something unrelated, and we were talking about the Minnesota Wild, and he brought up something which just sort of hit me hard. He said, they're not even guaranteed to get a playoff spot yet. Like if they lost their last 3 games and everybody else won, they could fall right out of the playoffs. I mean, that's how close it is in the West, and I think the Stars are the a prime contender in the Western Conference. You look at their roster, and I've said this before, and compare it to some of the top teams in the league. It measures up really nicely, particularly with Dubnyk playing well in net. Their defense. I think all of their defenders are playing at a very high level, and they're very, very impressive. And they're not even in the playoffs yet.
Isn't that that people play as well as they've played? This is absolutely a statement for the 3 points for regulation wins. I'm going to throw this out there today. Thanks, Mike. There's no question. Okay.
Zach, I had it last week, and I can find it again. Somebody did it.
It doesn't matter.
The 8 teams that were in each conference that made the playoffs had all made the playoffs with a 3-point regulation win.
Nothing, Mike, because the whole idea of it, you can do that all you want, and I could have done that too. I too know how to multiply, but the idea is that it doesn't matter, because what changes if you get 3 points for a regulation win is the way teams play at the end of games. Because right now the whole thing, whatever the records are right now, it's moot. I mean, all these games are going to overtime. Most of them aren't going to overtime, in my mind. If there's 3 points on the line, it's a totally different league. And but the fact is, the Wild have won several games that weren't even close to going to overtime. They've beaten teams by 2-3 goals in many occasions. That's why I'm saying that the Wild are one of the best teams in the NHL right now. No questions asked. That's my blog for tomorrow. What are the best teams in the NHL right now, based on if you went the last 2 months of the season, and it's totally different than you'd expect. So really, when you're picking the playoffs, who are you picking? I mean, the Wild are the best team in the West. They are. They just right now they're the best team in the West, and they're not making the playoffs. They probably are, but still.
Well, the last 3 games that the Wild have at Chicago, at Nashville, and at St. Louis.
Yeah,
that's a tough road to hoe.
I know.
I mean, that's my point. I mean, it's not unthinkable that they could lose those 3 games.
And those 3 teams are playing for a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I mean, I just don't see it happening, because the Wild have played too well for a long period of time here. But stranger things have happened, and the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, without Bufflin, they've hung in there. They've had big wins. And everybody, including myself, predicted doom and gloom for the Jets after they lost Bufflin, but. They rose up before when he was injured, and now that he's suspended, they've just continued on that path. So it's going to be a great playoff run, because we always throw around the word parity as if it's become almost a cliche, but the difference between the top teams and the bottom teams is just so slight now. Like it's not.
Right.
It's really insignificant.
It is
in
totally
terms of-
insignificant. I agree. In the West, especially, any of those series go anyway. You can't say that there's no. Is there anyone predicting a series less than 6 games in the first round in the Western Conference? I mean,
no.
are there any 5-game series? Not a chance, right?
Well, yeah, again, the only 2 teams that I see as easy outs right now, simply because they're not playing well, would be the Penguins and the Red Wings.
Yeah.
Everyone else, there's reason to like them. Those 2 teams have just struggled down the stretch, and it wouldn't take much for either team to sort of reach the point where you'd say, okay, well now they're firing on all 8 cylinders. But big game obviously in Ottawa tonight. I said to you earlier when we were off the air about I don't know whether this is the biggest regular season game since the Senators qualified on the last day of the season by beating Buffalo in 1997 to get into the playoffs, or just since Sunday when they got 1 point against Toronto when everybody was expecting them to get 2. But if they beat the Penguins tonight, the angst and the panic in Pittsburgh is going to be unbelievable, because they're going to be even now. Obviously, the Penguins have the tiebreaker, but they would if the Senators can win in regulation, they'd be even with 2 games to go, and the Penguins would have the tiebreaker. And the Red Wings, they have to beat Carolina, or they would be tied in that mess as well. And then the Bruins aren't even safe either. I mean, it's
amazing.
It's responsible.
No, it is.
There's no rhyme.
Tonight, by the way, if you're going to the game, this is courtesy of Pierre LeBrun on Twitter, but the Senators fans are going to be receiving this, okay, which is Andrew Hammond's head on a stick. Very Lord of the Flies, by the way, of the Senators. But still, I think that this is they'll be handing this out, so there'll be everybody. So when the Penguins look up into the crowd, they will see nothing but thousands and thousands of Andrew Hammonds facing them.
The Hamburglar.
Yes, I like it. I mean, what a story. It's one of those stories that definitely feels like it feels like a one-time legendary hockey thing, doesn't it? It feels like a John Drew story. It doesn't. It just feels. We haven't had one of these for a while. I was trying to think of the one before this that you could really mark, and John Drews goes way back. That's
playoffs.
So what you really like about this sort of situation? Like I love it when nicknames are not contrived, but just sort of happen. And the spontaneous throwing of the burgers. I mean, it's sort of like the rat thing in Florida.
Yeah.
Like when like what I loved most about that is that it just happened. Like it wasn't a marketing thing. Nobody thought it up. But Scott Mellenby slayed some rats in the Panthers dressing room, and the story came out. So fans threw some plastic rats, and then more fans did it the next game, and next thing you knew, you were knee deep. And that's what I love about the Hamburglar. He just happened to mention it, in passing. That's what they call them. And next thing you know, I mean, it's such a huge thing now. Now, Josh showed us yesterday with his hockey card. Like I love it when sports stories, just sort of arise out of the happenings of the day and aren't created by some marketing or public relations.
It feels really, doesn't it? It feels really natural. Julie, I think we talked about this before too.
Yeah.
Like, when you get in this situation where I wonder, and this is kind of a question for everybody on the panel. Sorry, that when a team, say the Senators are to make it into the playoffs, say they somehow squeak in. We've seen teams like this squeak in, and then that's it. Like this making the playoffs is such a big deal at this point. So much of their focus. And then they're going to face the Rangers in the first round. And maybe this is where you talk about a 5-game series or something like that. Or maybe this continues. I mean, what are your thoughts, Jules, if that happens?
Well, I think we had this debate a couple years ago. Remember when it was Minnesota and Columbus fighting out for that final spot in the West, and Minnesota ultimately won it, but pretty much everybody felt that Columbus was the better team to actually compete in the playoffs. But I feel that way about Ottawa. I mean, they may not be well equipped to compete against the best and the Rangers, but to say that they're ill-equipped and they're limping into the playoffs is
I think, inaccurate and unfair. Whereas, like Kevin said, if the Penguins and the Red Wings were to make the playoffs, those are two organizations that I think are limping into the playoffs. I mean, I even would put the Bruins in that mix because they still aren't even 100% healthy. So I'd rather have a team that is healthy and, more importantly, that has a goalie that's playing at the top of his game,
Right.
than a team that is without some of its firepower and not playing. So,
Well,
this could be the year where, the strength of your, first quarter of the season isn't going to get you in the playoffs.
Right.
But rather the strength of the last quarter of the season.
Simply for tension purposes and excitement, with 5 days to go in the season. I mean, the two games that are of focus tonight, I think, is Ottawa and Pittsburgh, and in a way Arizona and Calgary, because Calgary needs to keep pace with LA and with Winnipeg. And I think if Calgary wins that game, it's going to go down to the final game between Calgary and Winnipeg next Saturday. And if Ottawa equals Pittsburgh, then you could have all these different combinations of either Detroit falling out or Boston falling out or even Pittsburgh falling out if Ottawa can win their last 3 games. I mean, that's where those 2 lost points that they lost to Toronto over the last week or so are so key, because if they would already be tied with Pittsburgh, Boston, and Detroit had they won those 2 games against Toronto, who was basically mailing in the rest of the season.
That is the fascinating thing.
The one thing I'd say about the Bruins, though, in comparison to the Penguins, the Red, the Bruins have won 5 in a row now. Like, they, even with their their injury issues, they've sort of fought back, and Spooner came up and has played well, and they've sort of sorted out some lines, and the defense has come together. Rask has been good, so at least they're on a high. I think they've only lost 2 of their last 10 games in regulation, if I remember correctly, and meanwhile, the Penguins and the Red Wings have just struggled, trying to find their paces. So they're a little bit different, I think, the Bruins than the Red Wings and Penguins. But again, saying all that, it wouldn't take much for either of those 2 teams to get it together. For me, in addition to Letang and Ehrhoff being out, and then plus their long-term injuries of Mata and Dupuis, the big thing is it seems to me that Malkin is playing hurt. Like, he's been banged up for a long time, and he's back on the ice, but he's clearly not 100%. So there's a struggle there. The Red Wings have some injuries, but I think on balance, Pittsburgh's messiness is worse. I think the Red Wings. I feel like both the Penguins and the Red Wings are going to get in, but I don't know if either of them are prepared to make a lengthy run.
And Boston, they finished the season on the road because I believe because of the Frozen Four, and they play Washington, who's in a battle in the Metro, Florida, and at Tampa next Saturday. And according to the reports I saw yesterday, Chara took a shot off of his ankle in the Toronto game on Saturday, and he's listed as day-to-day. Now, knowing Chara, he's going to play, but how much that limits his effectiveness. I mean, he's already starting to lose a little mobility at 37 or 38 years old. I mean, a little more, and he maybe become more of a liability. And if that happens, then that could be the difference between a win and a loss. So, I mean, Boston is not free and clear right now, and there's going to be a lot of challenges for these teams with a few games to go.
Here's an interesting thing I was doing as I was doing some math there as you guys were talking for a second. The Minnesota Wild, we're talking about their chances, right? And they've got these 3 games left. If you look at their season series this year between Nashville, Chicago, and St. Louis, since February 1st, before February 1st, they were 1-6 against those 3 teams. Since February 1st, they're 5-0 against Nashville, St. Louis, and Chicago. Minnesota is. That's pretty crazy. I mean, they really have been that good, and they especially that good against those teams. I mean, they've been some close games, but I mean, Chicago won the first 3 games of this season series handily against Minnesota, and then the Wild came and shut them out in the middle of February, 3-0. So, yeah, I mean that's I think the matchups are so important this time of year, and I think that where we talk about to tie it in with what you were saying with Boston, I think that Boston and Pittsburgh, possibly even Ottawa or whoever, or even I mean any of those. Two of those three teams could be eliminated quickly, where in the West I don't think anybody gets eliminated quickly. We could see an interesting dichotomy there between the West and the East. The West series going on a lot longer than the East this year.
That's that's the issue too. I mean, sometimes I agree with you, the matchups are crucial, but sometimes there's really no reward for finishing first. I mean, let's just say the Kings end up again as the number 8 seed. Like, what kind of reward is that?
I know.
For winning the conference. I mean, Mike's alluded to this before. If it ended up being Anaheim and versus LA, like that just doesn't even seem fair. It's like, if you win the conference, you should have your choice of who you want to play.
That's the way it should work. I like that idea. Wouldn't that be fun? But that would be even worse. That would, in hockey terms, that would be even worse.
That would be horrible, because I mean they would never let you forget it. Well, they could have played anyone, but they chose us. Like,
right, and that team would have so much motivation.
No, what Anaheim could do is say, we choose the Arizona Coyotes.
All right, so the Kings and Ducks. Just if we're going to talk about matchups a little bit more today on Matchup Day. Kings and Ducks this year have played. Okay, they played 5 times. 4 of them have gone to overtime.
Yeah.
And 2 of them have gone to shootouts. 2 of the 4. So. So far the Kings have won 1. They won, and then the one in regulation was by the Ducks, and the Ducks have technically won. They've won 4 of the 5. They've won 4 of the 5 games.
This isn't exactly an example of the difference between a first overall President's Trophy winning team and a team that's struggling at the 82nd game to get into the playoffs. I mean, these teams are pretty even and fair. It's just one team seems to take off half the regular season and kicks it into gear in January,
right,
and the other one is playing at a 600 level throughout the season. But when it comes down to the postseason, they're about equal, and I would take obviously the Kings' clutch ability in the postseason over the Ducks, who haven't really taken any concerted run in the playoffs since 2007.
Right, exactly, and I mean the Ducks they've had their struggles, that's for sure, and I think that when you look at this playoffs, you really have to look. In the East, especially at Montreal, in terms of the Pacioretty injury. Now we've talked about that before, but that's a big injury. I mean, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of offense. But Pacioretty is definitely a spiritual guide on that team. He's one of the guys who I really do believe leads them. Julie,
that's a good one, spiritual guide.
Don't you agree? I mean,
It's a good term.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy who really does lead them, through the darker times on their offense.
What is he, a medicine man or something?
Yeah.
Right. He's
I feel that he is the voice of reason. The calm, cool, collected. Let's figure our crap out.
Yeah, he's no BS. He's no BS. Straight up.
No beating around the bush. I don't even think he sugarcoats things. It's just like, this is how it is. He's a straight shooter.
Exactly.
And he's a 40-goal scorer.
He's a 40-goal scorer, right.
Thank you.
I mean, on top of all else, but I'm saying this, so Michel Therrien, by the way, won his 200th game the other day for the Canadiens, and, in his 400th Canadian start. So he's 500, Michel Therrien, by the way, which is pretty crazy. Just throwing it out there. 200 out of 400 is nothing.
Eklund, tell us how you feel about Michel Therrien.
I don't know. Before we talk more about the backup situation.
Kevin, he's already hit the 3-point game. Now Michel Therrien. I'm waiting for the Carter Hutton match.
I'm telling you right now that without with Carter Hutton in goal, anyway, no.
How would you feel if Therrien would coach Carter Hutton in a 3-point game?
It would be the apocalypse.
This is totally unfair, Julie. They've been ripping me all year about this. I need you to back me up on this because I have nothing against Carter Hutton at all. But I really do believe that the Predators were unwise in not getting an experienced backup going into the playoffs. That was my whole theory. Julie?
Wasn't he the backup to the Blackhawks during their cup run?
No. Carter Hutton, no. He came out
Has
of the
he ever
Flyers.
played for the Blackhawks?
He was a Phantom. He was a Phantom
I know
a
he's
couple years
played
ago.
for a lot of.
Yeah, Carter Hutton was the Philadelphia
Was
Penguin
Carter
a few years
Hutton,
back.
E.F. Hutton's nephew.
I'll give you
Yeah.
that.
He's Timothy
Right.
Hutton's cousin.
Been around the block.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive he played for Chicago.
Yeah, he was a Chicago product. He played in Rockford.
But he
didn't.
wasn't their backup. I mean, he wasn't their back.
Yeah, he
Emery was
wasn't
their
their
backup on their cup run.
Yeah.
Carter Hutton
In
was.
2010?
Yeah, Emery.
Yeah, it was Emery.
Really?
So no, anyway, we'll move away from that situation because I don't want to get down that road again. But I'm just saying, what happens there? Predators have started to get their act together as well. But I still believe, guys, flat out, that the St. Louis Blues are the team to beat in the West. I just think that they're to me, that's just crazy. But let's go around the corner now. Since we're on Tuesday, and we got the three best predicting people I know. As far as between the three of you, I've never heard any of you get anything wrong in these situations. So I'm going to throw this out today, and you're going to tell me who's going to make the playoffs. So who is actually going to make the playoffs? How is this going to play out? Who's going to play who in the first round, basically? So Mike? You'll start with you, Mike, because I wanted to throw that pressure on you first. But who is going to make the playoffs in the East? Just start with the East first.
Well, I mean, you talking about of those four teams, who's going to miss out?
Yeah, who's not making it?
I think in the end, Ottawa's not going to make it. I think that maybe they beat Pittsburgh tonight, but maybe the magic has run out. I mean, the trend right now is Detroit and Pittsburgh going down, and Ottawa is red hot, and Boston is red hot. But I somehow think that Ottawa will fall short.
Of the three teams, Boston, Detroit, and that's the other question you can all ask. But of Boston, Detroit, or Pittsburgh, who's the most likely to fall out?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh? All right. Kevin, what are your thoughts of the Eastern Conference team?
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with Mike on that. I don't think the Senators are going to be able to pull it off. They just have to be perfect, and I got to believe that the Penguins are going to rise up here. There's just they've got Crosby and Malkin, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how I view it. And but the team that's most likely to fall out, in my opinion, would be Detroit. I think they've got they should beat the Carolina Hurricanes, but they've had inconsistency in that, inconsistency on defense, and they've had trouble getting, even though they've scored a lot of goals, they have had trouble getting them when they need them. So
Yeah.
I would say they're the most likely, but I think they're going to get in, and I think you're going to see probably the Penguins being the 8th seed and end up playing maybe the Rangers in the.
Which would be a great first round matchup.
Wow.
Yeah.
It would be fun, at least. It could be great. Julie, who are your picks on this one? The East.
I think that it's going to be Boston
You think Boston's going to fall out?
that falls out.
Do you think Ottawa will make it?
I do think Ottawa will make it. I think that Boston has just been so fickle, and they still have all those. Well, I can't say all those, but they still have injuries. And like I said previously, I would rather a team that is strong going into the postseason rather than a team that's limping in and is basically making the playoffs simply because of a really good start to the season.
Right. I mean, but Boston on that, they never. I mean, they had their moments, but they were never really a good team this year. They had their moments where they picked it up in the middle. But Boston also has this. Well, just another interesting thing I found that's fascinating. They have this. If you go to BostonBruins.com, they have the Stanley Cup Playoffs Round 1 tickets on sale now. That's another. I know you have to do this, but I don't think the other teams have that on their pages. Just for what it's worth.
They're all selling.
Are they?
Yeah.
And they've had it for at least 2 weeks.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong then. All right, so I know you have to do that kind of thing, but
I actually think
teams are free to do that for sure.
The Florida Panthers had it up, and they were never within. They were only within.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the Red Wings been hawking them for a while as well.
Okay, now here's the next question about these. Now we'll move to the West. What team? This will be panel day. Ask the panel. What team of those three teams, Boston, Pittsburgh, or Detroit, would be better suited? Would actually gain more from falling out of the playoffs? Like, how sometimes the team that makes the playoffs actually gives them hope, but a team that doesn't make the playoffs, they have to make massive changes. Which of those three teams needs to make changes? Actually, changes are more likely when they don't make the playoffs.
Okay.
Mike?
I think it's the Detroit Red Wings.
You think the Red Wings need to make the most changes?
Well, no. I think they would gain the most from missing the playoffs because maybe, first of all, the high draft pick. Pittsburgh would be last on my list because they don't have their first round pick.
Higher draft pick.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily call it high.
Yeah.
I mean, if they miss the playoffs, you could see a number of changes there. The only thing is with Detroit, if they miss the playoffs, does that increase the odds of Babcock leaving? I don't particularly think so. I think if they pay him the money and he sees the young players that they have, that he's going to stay. With Boston, if they miss the playoffs, I think they fire Chiarelli and they fire Claude Julien. So there's going to be an upheaval of that organization. And I don't think it's really justified because I think they're two really good hockey guys, and I think right now this is sort of a year where they were sort of screwed by the Iginla bonus on the contract and injuries to Chara. So I mean I don't think missing the playoffs would benefit them, but I think Detroit, if they're able to keep Babcock, they would get a pick in the top 14 and could win the lottery. And I think they could use, they have a record with guys like Mantha and Larkin that they can get really good players even deeper in the first round. That would probably help them eventually just turn things around in a couple years.
I disagree with this very much so. But Kevin, I'll give you my thoughts. But Kevin, what are your who benefits the most?
I actually agree completely with Mike on that one. I mean, the first round pick is lost for the Penguins, so they wouldn't benefit from that. I think the Bruins their hands are tied because of cap constraints. They're going to have a difficult time. If the Red Wings don't make the playoffs, I think it'll force them to completely reevaluate their defense, and I think they'll make major changes. I think what it'll mean is that Marchenko will get an opportunity to play next season, who's a safer, conservative defenseman.
Right.
I think they may look at Kroll and all that younger players. Like you may see, if the Red Wings miss the playoffs, you may see 3 or more new defensemen on that team next season. Where if they make the playoffs, they'll be less inclined to do that, I think. So I think there would be changes. And here's the one thing that I've brought up about, we've all seen this happen in other businesses, and you've heard stories of this where, you go into a season-ending meeting, or you just go into a meeting at a major company where you're not quite sure what's going to happen, and then when you're there, everyone just sort of agrees. Now, I'm speaking of Mike Babcock and Ken Holland. What if they just agree, hey, maybe it's just time to go in a different direction, and that includes Mike Babcock just moving on. Just that's not the plan. But when you're in there and talking it out, and what's wrong with this team? Well, I don't know. Well, maybe it's just time for me to go elsewhere. So, I mean, I think that's a plausible scenario where it's like not dissimilar to what went on last summer in Nashville when David Poile knew that Barry Trotz was still a good coach, a great coach, but just felt like it was time to move on. And I think Barry Trotz even knew it was time to move on. So I think if the Red Wings miss the playoffs, there's a potential for that to happen, that they just get in a room. I don't think it's likely. I think he's going to stay, but I think it's possible that he could get in a room with Ken Holland and they just sort of reach a conclusion that maybe we just need to have a fresh face and a new voice, and maybe I need to go elsewhere and get a fresh challenge, those kind of things. So,
that's interesting.
But otherwise, I agree with Mike, and just same thing on Boston as well. I agree with Mike. Like I think it's criminal that people are suggesting that Chiarelli and Claude Julien should be fired if they don't make the playoffs. Like, it's just one of those things. This is the National Parity League.
Yeah, no, so. I mean, I agree with that. I agree with Boston, but I think, Julie, what's yours? I'll give you after Julie. Who benefits the most, Jules?
Well, it depends on how you determine benefits. I love all of the reasons that you guys are giving about Detroit, and I do think that they benefit from that. I've also heard that they're very interested in drafting a defenseman this year and are possibly even considering, no matter where they are, moving up in order to get the guy that they want, who might also be close to the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I have an idea who you're talking about, Julie.
So there's that, and also their AHL affiliate is kicking butt and taking names in their division. So the thought of getting some of the younger guys who are still eligible to participate in that and give them the opportunity to win another Calder Cup, I think is going to work for them in the long run. You're talking sweeping changes, and I'm talking more general improvements to the team and how they can become better, maybe not even next year, but in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things that Detroit absolutely prides themselves on, and I think if my numbers are correct, they might have changed given the roster changes that they've had because of injuries. But of their rosters, 16 of them are Detroit products in the sense that they either drafted them or they were their first NHL contract.
Right.
Signing them out of college or whatever.
Yeah, which is an incredible number.
It's huge. They totally pride themselves on being able to develop their players. So with that in mind, how they think, giving the younger guys the experience and the ability to play in the Calder Cup is going to be an advantage to them. Being able to draft higher is going to be an advantage to them, and again, potentially move up in the draft to get the guy that they want. So there's that. Whereas I think the Bruins, it would be more of a cause. I think you'd have more fans. Although at this point in the season, I don't know too many Bruins fans who are actually holding out hope that they're going to be able to do anything in the playoffs once they get there. So, and for the Bruins fans, it's not about getting to the playoffs. Getting to the playoffs is not good enough. They want to win. And so if they can improve their team by not winning and forcing that hand, then I think there'd be a lot of Bruins fans who would be in favor of that. But again, that is more sweeping changes. I think you'll see more roster moves in that regard, and changes in upper level management. Getting back to Detroit, I will agree with you, Kevin. I think that the defense for the Red Wings is where they need to address most attention, which is why I think that they're really excited about the possibility of drafting a really good defenseman.
Yeah, I see. This is my thing about this whole question and the way I think about which team can benefit most. And I know it's a very vague question. So, I think the team of those three teams, I see the Red Wings, and I see a team that I think is going in the right direction. I think their window is opening still, and I think that they are heading. I know their defense can need changes, but they've got some really good young players. They've got some really solid. I think their future is very solid. I think Boston, in the same way, to a degree, Boston I don't think is done by any stretch of the imagination. They still feel like and I think their coaching is great, and I think their GM is great. I don't buy into all this stuff that Darren Dreger and others have been talking about these guys being fired at the end of the year. I don't see Boston doing that. I might be wrong. It seems just completely absurd to me, being that this team's been in the Stanley Cup Finals twice in the last few years. But I do think systematically the Penguins need a slap across the face. I think this is a team that needs the biggest change. And I know we can talk about injuries, but I think and all that. But I think there's something inherently. I don't feel like there's something deeply wrong at the core with the Red Wings or with the Bruins, but I do feel like there's something wrong at the core of the Penguins. It feels to me, maybe I'm wrong, but thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I can see that, what you're saying. I mean, the Penguins, the mandate for Jim Rutherford and Mike Johnston coming in was to make this team more playoff ready this season. And it looked like Rutherford had done that with, bringing in Hornquist, who's a grittier player, he goes hard to the net, will play along the boards, and then he changed up the role of players in the third and fourth line. But, it doesn't do you any good to be better prepared for the playoffs if you don't get in the playoffs.
Exactly.
So, if they fail, then I can see that. I think, what the drumbeat that you're hearing out of Pittsburgh is people to believe that the window's closing. So if that's the case, you've got to do a reset on the team. And, you're not going to reset Malkin and Crosby.
Exactly.
So, Hornquist is probably part of the solution now, and they've got some younger players. So, what it could mean is a pretty aggressive, remake of the support material. So you could make a case for that. I mean,
it's anybody's game, but I agree. No, there's a quick
2009 was a long time ago.
It was, and the fact is, the Penguins have gotten to the point where they've lost the ability to do the one thing that they do best, which is score goals.
Yeah.
And and that's why I think this whole thing. I mean, the Penguins should not be a team that struggles to score goals. I mean, you can see them being, and you could argue, okay, you're changing the system, and that's going to change the way your ability to score goals. There's no question about that. They're playing a little more defensively. They're playing a little more controlled. But even when Baalsma had them play defensively, like when Crosby was out or Malkin was out, they still scored goals. They have not scored goals, and there's no reason for that. They've added Perrin, they've added Hornquist.
Well,
they've got the talent to score.
And let me just play devil's advocate here where it comes with the Penguins. They've changed coaches. They changed offensive and defensive philosophies. They've changed general managers. They've changed the supporting cast. If they miss the playoffs, and as you said, the window is starting to close, and Crosby and Malkin in their late 20s, is the next move, okay, do we trade one of these guys and get a supporting cast around one of them? Trade Malkin and get 2 or 3 pieces instead of having him occupy 1/6 of your salary cap, which it's justified. He's a fantastic player, but maybe the chemistry of that team with those 2 centerpieces there just doesn't work anymore. I mean, it clearly hasn't, because they haven't been able to win since 2009. But they have to try something different, and I don't know whether reshuffling the deck chairs and trading Hornquist or trading Kunitz, who's in his mid-30s. If that satisfies anything, they may have to consider that type of big move to change things.
Something has to. Yeah, I think so.
This is why that's not going to happen.
Right.
Just look at the consecutive sellout streak in Pittsburgh.
Right.
This is still a big business. You are not going to mess with Crosby and Malkin. Yeah, you can't afford it. I mean, Mario Lemieux has lived through the bankrupt times of that. I mean, it's you can't just throw around those names and think, well, we'll just trade that and then we'll reset a little bit, and that's not going to happen. Not with that consecutive sellout streak there.
Yeah, they just can't do it. I mean, it would take one of those guys really wanting out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. No, I mean, they would almost require the player to initiate it. I mean, otherwise the backlash could be significant, and doesn't the difference between a franchise thriving and being in trouble is doesn't take much. So
it's so small. I mean, we're seeing it right now.
Before we go, I wanted to just to clarify a point yesterday. It came up at the end of the show, and I went back and listened to the tape to make sure that I didn't misspeak, and I don't think I did. But let me say it again. The question was about the draft, and I made the point that it's more likely that the teams will all move down one than not. And someone said, hey, it's 45%. But the only point I was trying to make is when I look at things with regard to the draft, I mean, I do what's likely to happen, and then, if it doesn't happen. And I looked at the odds, and my point I was trying to make is a year ago, it was almost a 60% chance that the teams who were in the top 3 positions were going to stay there.
Right.
Now, it's 55% that they won't. So,
which is amazing.
That they're going to all move down. So when I view it is, it's likely that they're going to all move down one. So Toronto, the Oilers would go from 3 to 4, which would put them in a position to take him. That was the only point I was making. And then I said at the end, although saying all that, probably it won't happen that way because that's the odds say that it will.
Right. I know. No, you're absolutely. I mean, that's why this is going to be such an incredible event. This draft lottery is going to be, I mean, as anticipated as any playoff game is going to be. I mean, that's going to be a crazy, exciting night. And because there's so many teams and there's so many big fan bases involved too. Not just the teams that are. We're not just talking about teams that are on the bottom end of this. We're talking about Buffalo, and we're talking about Toronto, and we're talking about Edmonton. And we're even talking about Philly to a degree. We're talking about rabid fan bases who have shots at this. It's going to be phenomenal. I just got a text from a source too, and I just want to throw this out there. And I'll put a quick blog up before just the last thing, and then we'll do our trade draft simulator, our NHL lottery simulator. This is a source in Chicago who tells me that I should not rule out Patrick Kane returning in the first round of the playoffs. And I was I texted it back and like, what do you mean? Well, he's practicing again today. He's got to get clearance, of course, but he's really pushing them that he's okay. That's.
I mean, he's skating in a non-contact jersey, and
I know, but he's pushing him to get. He's saying he can skate contact. Now, of course, publicly he's not going to say this, but there's a huge. He's pushing. I mean, as hockey players always do, but he's trying to show them in every which way that he can do anything, and that a week from now he can play, which is crazy, but just we heard that this could be.
I mean, if what you said to me was that Kane it feels like he's ready, and if they got to the point where they were down 3-2 in a series, would they bring him in? Maybe, but it depends. I think everything depends on how things are going for them. The more time they can get him off, the better. So, but I mean, it's
now see, the key. I'll agree with you there, Kevin, 100%. Because the key is that he could play in the first round of the playoffs. That doesn't mean he's going to play game one.
Right. This person didn't say game one, just says he's going to be ready. And I think that, but the idea here is that if you're ready, if you're Patrick Kane and I mean, they're playing St. Louis or Nashville. They're not playing a team that you can sit back and hope that you're not falling behind against. I mean, you can try. I mean, one game, you could say, 2 games. You fall down 2-0 to either St. Louis or Nashville, you're in trouble.
Let's just say this: if they're 2-2 in a series against St. Louis or Nashville, and Kane says, I'm good enough to play the power play and basically occupy the space of a fourth line guy, I think that then there's a chance that he would go. Or in a Game 7 scenario. I can't see him coming back 5-6 weeks early from a shattered collarbone.
It's insane. I agree with you. I'm just saying what I'm hearing out there and what was being told to me. I don't know that it's a smart thing to do. I don't know that the Hawks would allow it. But he is definitely pushing for it. This is a source that I know is connected enough to tell me that he is telling him behind the scenes, I'm going to be ready for the playoffs. I'm going to be ready for the playoffs. So, he feels great for what it's worth. He's trying to heal as fast as he can, so to speak,
I think
they always say.
Give it 2 games. That buys him an extra week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, basically the source we should have is the doctor. Because
right, and that is what this person said. This person said the question is whether they would ever give him medical clearance to go at this point. Yeah,
because it doesn't matter what Patrick Kane says, because you said it yourself earlier. Every player says I'm ready.
Especially going into year one of a $10 million a year contract.
But I will say this as well: your collarbone is just a bone. Okay, so it's not like you have to deal with heavy scar tissue, so it's not like it's a wrist or anything like that. So, there's a lot of things that he's still been able to do while he heals.
He's been able to keep in shape and be able to ride bikes and stuff like that. And,
exactly. And there is limited movement with your hand, because you can move. He can practice stick drills. He just can't,
I mean, the danger is obviously taking a hit, right? I mean, you can't right.
That's going to be a challenge. 100%.
Yeah, that's where it gets scary as hell. I mean, if he's out there, he's a target. He's got a target on him right now. I mean, you play in St. Louis or Nashville. Shea Weber's not going to hold up on.
No, it also depends on exactly what they did to repair it.
Yeah.
I don't know the details of what they did. I doubt it's just pins and screws and stuff. I'm sure there's some sort of plating in there, which is going to make it inherently stronger to begin with. So that could factor into
it too. I know.
There's lots of things that, and I mean,
here's the thing, right?
It's impossible. But we all said the same thing about Steven Stamkos and him wanting to come back from his broken leg.
And maybe he's lived the last 6 weeks in a hyperbaric chamber.
Well, I'm sure he's done everything he can, like they do that, and he probably has, and the fact of the matter is, I mean, what I take out of this, though, is the second round of the playoffs is looking pretty good for Patrick Kane, you can say that, because that didn't look so good a few weeks ago, right? So, you can say that if he's pushing this hard for the first round of the playoffs and feels okay, you could say the second round of the playoffs, if they get there. All right, here's the draft simulator. We got to get going after this, but, all right, so here's our winner today. Wow, this is crazy. Here we go, ready? The San Jose Sharks. Okay, the Sharks are welcoming Connor McDavid after being officially eliminated from the playoffs last evening. Yeah, so they are completely. Wow, that's crazy, huh? I mean, can you
They've won
imagine?
before. I don't remember them
Yeah,
winning.
this
This is their
time
second win. This is their second win because we did talk about, you know, what this does to their center situation. They already have with Thornton and Marlowe. Now they've got
Joe,
another.
Patrick, we really would like you to go.
Someone's moving to the wing is all I can say. Because McDavid is one of your top two centers, right? I mean, you can't. It's just like someone's moving to the wing, you know, or Marlowe's moving to third. But you know, hell, that's. I mean, can you imagine that? It would be actually a really, you know, San Jose is a great organization. I wouldn't mind seeing them have a star like this. I mean, they haven't really had anybody like this. I mean, George Thornton's a star, but they've never had. I mean, Timo Solani. You know, I was when I was engaged. My wife was we were living out there a little bit, and it was fun to see how much that place just revolved around Timo. Timo was such a celebrity. It would be good to see another celebrity like that. I would like this move, but I don't know. Possible. All we can say is every time we do this lottery simulator, it shocks me, and it just shows you how crazy that night's going to be in a couple weeks. All right, guys. Remember, without the buzz,
It's just hockey.
talk to you soon.